March 17, 1943, Tirpitz-Sufa, 76 to 78, Berlin. The folder hit the mahogany desk so hard that Admiral Wilhelm Canaris's coffee splashed across a pile of intelligence reports, reports that would have gotten him executed if the Gestapo ever saw them. No way. The Americans must be feeding us propaganda through agents we thought we'd turned. Canaris glanced out the tall windows of the Abwehr headquarters toward the Landwehr Canal, where Rosa Luxemburg's body was dumped 24 years ago. Now, as the head of German military intelligence, he stared at a report in his trembling hands. It didn't just poke holes in Nazi propaganda. It shattered the whole math behind German victory. Intercepted radio traffic and reports from agents still working in Mexico City all said the same thing. Ford's Willow Run plant in the US was pumping out a 4-engine B-24 Liberator bomber every single hour. Every hour, the B-24, 1.5 million parts, 450,000 rivets, 30,000 separate components, all crammed into an 18-ton beast rolling off an assembly line faster than Germany, could crank out a basic Kübelwagen Jeep. Major Friedrich Wilhelm Heinz stood stiffly at attention in front of Canaris's desk. He'd checked the numbers 3 times. Nothing changed. Neither man knew it, but this was the moment everything fell apart for German intelligence. A massive failure that would haunt the war. They just couldn't grasp, let alone explain to the Nazi leadership how gigantic America's industrial machine really was. They doomed the Reich with a simple math error. The real collapse started 2 years earlier. Back in 1941, Luftwaffe General Karl Köhler had shown Hermann Göring reports from military attaché Friedrich von Boeticher in Washington. These said the Americans were about to hit 2,000 new planes a month. Göring laughed, actually laughed right in his face. Americans? All they know how to build are refrigerators and razor blades, not warplanes. That's what he told Hitler just days after Pearl Harbor. Their democracy makes them weak. Their mongrel population makes them slow. Their Jews make them corrupt. There's no way they can build what they claim. By March 1943, though, German networks across the Americas kept reporting things that made a mockery of Nazi racial theories and economic truths. The sources varied: Mexican businessmen who liked the Reich, Spanish diplomats, Swedish execs passing through Detroit, even intercepted letters from American workers to family in neutral countries. All of them said the same impossible thing. Ford's Willow Run was making more heavy bombers than every German aircraft factory put together. Oberstleutnant Nicola Ritter, the guy in charge of Abwehr's air intelligence, spent 3 weeks chewing on the data. He wasn't just another desk officer. He'd flown for Lufthansa, lived in America for a decade. His old Manhattan apartment looked out at the Chrysler building going up. He'd seen the Americans build the world's tallest tower in under 2 years. Ritter reported to Canaris, "If these numbers are right, and I believe they are, Germany's already lost. Now it's just math and time." The intelligence snaked in through risky, winding routes. Georg Nicholas ran the main Abwehr network in Mexico City, making friends with American businessmen who bounced between Detroit and Mexico's oil fields. These men chatted over dinner about miracles they'd seen, never realizing German agents were listening in. On February 3, 1943, American oil executive Harold Morrison showed up at a party at the German-Mexican Commerce Association in Mexico City. After a few too many tequilas, Morrison started gushing about his recent tour of Willow Run. Ford had invited him to impress possible investors to show they could deliver on government contracts. "Gentlemen," Morrison began, not knowing that Wolfgang Blau, a German agent playing the role of an Argentine leather merchant, was mentally recording every word. "What I saw is beyond belief. The assembly line is a mile long. The building's so big, clouds actually form inside, and sometimes it rains under the roof. They've got 42,000 workers, thousands of them women, black women, building the most complex machine anybody's ever tried to make. Morrison grabbed a pencil and sketched on a napkin. The bomber's got 2 bomb bays. Each can hold 4,000 pounds of bombs, 4 engines, each pushing out 1,200 horsepower. They build the plane in sections, sub-assemblies, Ford calls them, and then everything flows together like rivers meeting in the sea. Wing sections come in from one side, fuselages from another, tail assemblies from somewhere else. They all meet up like clockwork along the line. Blam asked about it, trying to play it cool. But come on, with that much going on, you'd expect breakdowns and delays all the time, right? Morrison just laughed. That's what the folks at Consolidated Aircraft used to think. They mocked Ford, said, "You can't build planes the way you build cars." Ford proved them wrong. He broke the bomber down into 60,000 separate steps. Each worker does the same job again and again. Yesterday, a woman was cooking breakfast for her kids. Today, she's installing hydraulic lines in a tail section. They train people in days, not months. A lot of the most detailed intel actually flowed through Franco's Spain. Colonel José Ungria, the Spanish military attaché in Washington, kept close with American aircraft makers while secretly passing info to Germany. Germany paid in tungsten, which Spain badly needed. In March 1943, Ungria showed up at a reception at the Argentine embassy and met Charles Sorensen, Ford's production chief, the guy behind Willow Run. Sorensen thought he was talking to a diplomat from a neutral country, maybe someone who'd buy planes after the war. So he didn't hold back. Proud of what his team had built, he had no idea that within 2 weeks, everything he said would land on a desk in Berlin. When I first saw Consolidated San Diego plant in 1940, they were building B-24s outside in the sun. Each one was a little different. It took 180,000 man-hours to finish a single plane. I knew we could beat that. Ungria pressed for details, saying he was just a curious military engineer. Sorensen, still proud, spilled even more. I remember spending a night in a San Diego hotel room, sketching out the whole production flow. We'd build bombers like we build cars. Instead of workers swarming over a still airplane, we'd move the plane past stationary workers. Each person would do a specific job over and over until they nailed it. Ungria wanted to know how they handled such a big, complicated workforce. Sorensen told him, "We built an apprentice school. We train 8,000 workers a week. 40% of our workforce are women. They're actually better at the detail work, smaller hands, more patience. We've got black workers running complex machines, 16-year-olds managing supply chains. That's what democracy means. Everyone pitches in." German intelligence kept getting the same reports from all over Sweden, Argentina, Japan, Turkey, confirming the numbers coming out of Willow Run. The Swedish engineer Erik Lundberg visited in March 1943 and wrote, "The plant runs with an efficiency Europeans just don't get. They use 1/1600 specialized tools, many for just one job. The capital investment is massive, maybe $200 million for tooling alone." Japanese commander Toshikazu Omi's coded message, intercepted by German intelligence, backed that up. This one factory makes more planes in a month than all of Japan's aviation industry. By April 1943, the Germans had verified the numbers from 17 different sources. Willow Run was cranking out 650 B-24s a month at its peak. Altogether, American plants were turning out over 1,400 B-24s every month. The numbers were mind-blowing. Still, the Germans weren't buying it. Desperate for hard proof, Canaris ordered Operation Pastorius, send saboteurs into the U.S. by submarine. George John Dash, the leader of one of the two teams, had lived in America for 20 years before heading back to Germany in 1939. His real orders were to gather intel on aircraft production before blowing anything up. Early in the morning, June 13th, 1942, Dash's team landed at Amagansett, Long Island, coming ashore from U-202 after midnight. Within days, racked by guilt and overwhelmed by what he'd seen of America's capacity, Dash surrendered to the FBI. During interrogation, he dropped a bombshell. Canaris told me Berlin doesn't believe your production numbers. They think Willow Run is just propaganda. He wanted photos, head counts, shipping logs, something to force Göring to face facts. FBI Special Agent Charles Lanman couldn't believe it. They don't think we're making a bomber an hour? Dash just laughed. Agent Lanman, I lived here. I've seen your car factories. I tried to tell them if Ford could make a car every minute before the war, they could make a bombers every hour during it. They called me a defeatist. On April 20th, 1943, Hitler's 54th birthday, Canaris showed up at Göring's hunting estate, Karin Hall, north of Berlin. He didn't come empty-handed. He laid out photos, intercepted documents, reports from all sorts of sources. The table groaned under the evidence. Canaris was careful, almost cautious. Herr Reichsmarschall, he started, we've got confirmation from 17 independent sources. The Ford Willow Run plant is cranking out one B-24 Liberator an hour at peak. They've kept that up since January. Göring, who by now weighed almost 300 pounds, picked up a photo, an endless assembly line, planes in every stage of birth. He sneered. Canaris, do you take me for a fool? These are wooden models, propaganda props. The Americans want us to think they build bombers like sausages. That Willow Run place probably manages 50 a month, if that. Canaris tried again. He pulled out a railroad manifest showing massive aluminum shipments. Herr Reichsmarschall, they're burning through 16 million pounds of aluminum a month at just this plant. That's more than our entire monthly output. Göring just laughed, sharp and ugly. And where do they get all this aluminum? They're Negro workers? They're women riveters? You've been fooled by American lies. A week later, Canaris found himself at the Wolf's Lair, facing Hitler himself. Jodl, Keitel, and Goebbels sat in. Hitler was hunched over Eastern Front maps. Operation Citadel was coming. Canaris laid out the facts, knowing he was risking his neck. Mein Führer, if the Americans are really building 1,400 B-24s a month, plus the same number of B-17s, plus fighters, and the British too, the bombing will soon overwhelm us. Hitler's reply was classic. Admiral, Americans can mass-produce refrigerators and cars, but a bomber isn't a car. It takes skill, dedication. We spent 6 years getting ready for war, and they claim to do it in 16 months? Impossible. Jodl did some quick math. Even if we take a quarter of these numbers, the numbers are false. Hitler cut in. They joined the war in December 1941, building this miracle factory and reaching those numbers now. Impossible. What they didn't know, Canaris had film from Willow Run, smuggled out of Switzerland. 5 minutes of footage, the assembly line in motion. He and his deputy, Hans Oster, watched it behind locked doors. The camera followed the mile-long line. B-24s everywhere, moving down the line. Workers everywhere, men, women, black, white, moving like clockwork. A visible clock in the shot proved the timing. Oster could barely whisper, "My God, it's real!" Canaris lit the film with his cigarette lighter and burned it. "We can't show this. They'll call it fake or call us traitors." Then, in November 1943, German intelligence got aerial photos of Willow Run from a Spanish diplomat. Analysts pored over them for weeks. The parking lot alone held about 12,000 cars, 3 shifts, day and night. Finished, B-24s waited on the airfield, 47 ready to fly. The assembly line was visible through the skylights. Rail sidings were packed with freight cars bringing in materials. Analyst Herman Bernard wrote, "Photos confirm human intelligence. Production rate matches. We need to rethink everything." Göring saw the photos and brushed them off. Clever fakes. Must be scale models. But Albert Speer, the only Nazi leader who really understood industry, got his hands on the intelligence. His diary, found after the war, showed his dread. If Willow Run's numbers are even half true, this isn't defeat, it's annihilation. They build more planes in a month than we do in a year. But if I say this out loud, I'm dead. Dr. Otto Ohlendorf, head of SD Inland and a trained economist, studied American economic data. In December, he sent Himmler a blunt report. In 1941, Ford churned out 1.1 million cars. Then they flipped that entire operation over to bombers, almost overnight. By June 1944, the Americans had built enough B-24s to match the whole London Blitz's bombing tonnage every single day. On Christmas Eve 1943, Canaris, head of German intelligence, got hold of the latest American production numbers for 1944, 18,000 B-24 Liberators, 12,000 B-17 Flying Fortresses, 4,000 B-29 Super Fortresses, plus 40,000 fighter planes. Altogether, 86,000 aircraft. When Hitler saw these numbers, he scoffed. He said the Americans were bragging they'd make more planes in a year than all of history combined. He called it nonsense, but the numbers didn't lie. By February 1944, Canaris was out, accused of defeatism and treason. In came Walter Schellenberg, a loyal Nazi who'd never crossed Hitler or Göring. But it was getting harder to ignore reality. On February 20th, 1944, during what became known as Big Week, the U.S. 8th Air Force sent over 1,000 bombers to hit German aircraft factories. In just 6 days, they dropped more bombs than the Luftwaffe had managed during the entire Blitz on Britain. Adolf Galland, a Luftwaffe ace, told Göring, "Herr Reichsmarschall, I counted more than 800 bombers flying in one formation. They're real, and they're dropping real bombs." Then came D-Day. June 6, 1944, over 11,000 Allied planes darkened the skies over France. The Luftwaffe scraped together fewer than 300 fighters to stop them. Field Marshal Hugo Sperl sent a frantic message to Berlin. "The enemy's air superiority is absolute. Our intelligence was right. We fooled ourselves, not the Americans." Meanwhile, at Willow Run, production hit its stride in April 1944 with 2 9-hour shifts. 6 days a week, workers built 453 planes in 468 hours. That's one B-24 finished every 63 minutes. The place was massive, 42,331 workers, including 11,000 women, about a quarter of the workforce. 3,800 African Americans, 9%, and 200 disabled workers, 3%. This workforce alone would have sent the Nazi racial theories up in flames. The so-called inferior races and weaker people were outproducing the so-called German master race, and by a huge margin. After the war, German intelligence officers came clean. Schellenberg testified at Nuremberg that by early 1943, they knew the American numbers were real. Every professional in the field understood it. But telling the truth meant risking execution for defeatism. Hans Bernd Gisevius wrote later, "The tragedy wasn't that we lacked intelligence about American production. We were drowning in it. The tragedy was that nobody at the top wanted to believe it because it shattered their racial ideology. Those who tried to warn the regime paid dearly." Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, executed April 9, 1945, at Flossenburg. Hans Oster, same date, same place. Alexis von Roen, executed October 1944 for his part in the July 20th plot. Gisevius escaped to Switzerland and survived. After the war, the U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey confirmed the numbers. Willow Run built 8,785 B-24s from 1942 to 1945 at its peak. The line turned out 650 planes a month, keeping up that crazy hourly rate for months on end. The cost for each bomber dropped from $238,000 to $137,000. Albert Speer, Germany's armaments minister, was asked later why they ignored all the intelligence. He said, admitting Ford could make a bomber every hour meant admitting the Nazis had been completely wrong. Democracy wasn't weak, it was strong. Racial mixing didn't make people weaker, it made them stronger. Women could do men's work, and it meant they'd started a war they could never win. And really, who was going to tell Hitler that? There's a human side to all this too. Rose Will Monroe, she was the real-life Rosie the Riveter. She worked a rivet gun on the B-24 line before Pearl Harbor. She'd never set foot in a factory. She said in 1984, "We knew we were building something important. Every rivet we drove was going to help end the war. We worked double shifts, sometimes slept in the parking lot. We had brothers, husbands, sweethearts flying those planes." Ignoring the truth about Willow Run had huge consequences for Germany. They kept making bombers too long instead of fighters. They wasted resources on so-called wonder weapons instead of real defenses. Their operations planned for hundreds of bombers, not thousands. They missed chances for peace because they couldn't face the scale of their defeat. Only after the war did German economists realize the true cost. Willow Run alone cost $200 million, and it helped crush the Reich. From 1933 to 1945, Germany poured $400 million in today's money into its entire aircraft industry. Now, take Ford's Willow Run plant in the US. That single factory alone covered 3.5 million square feet. All of Germany's aircraft factories put together barely doubled that at 8 million square feet. Willow Run burned through 2.5 million kilowatt hours of electricity every month. One American factory used more resources than some entire German cities. When the war ended and people finally saw the numbers, the scale was staggering. The U.S. built 18,988 B-24 bombers. Willow Run alone cranked out 8,685 of them. They turned out 12,731 B-17s as well. From 1940 to 1945, the United States produced a total of 33,717 aircraft. Germany managed 94 to 700 over the same period. But here's the kicker. The U.S. was fighting a two-ocean war and still made more than 3 times the number of planes Germany did. Historians call Germany's failure to grasp this American production juggernaut one of the biggest intelligence screw-ups in military history. It wasn't like German spies didn't do their jobs. They actually collected solid, detailed numbers on U.S. production. The real problem? German leaders just refused to believe what didn't fit with how they saw the world. Dr. Gerd Weinberg later concluded that by early 1943, German intelligence had nailed down exactly what the Americans were building. If their leaders had listened, Germany could have pushed for peace 2 years sooner, and millions of lives would have been saved. There's a lesson here, and it's not just about war. You can have perfect information and still get everything wrong if you ignore facts you don't like. Cognitive bias, ideology, groupthink. Call it what you want. If your system punishes bad news, you end up with comfortable lies. And that's how you lose everything. Flash forward to 1985 at the dedication of the Yankee Air Museum at Willow Run. Rose Willow Monroe, one of the original Rosie the riveter workers met Hans Rudel, a former Luftwaffe pilot. Rudel asked, "How did you build so many so fast?" Rose just smiled and said, "Honey, we just went to work every day and did our job. Nothing fancy. Just punch in, build bombers, punch out. Democracy isn't complicated. It's just free people doing their best." Rudel shook his head. "We were told democracy made you weak, that your diversity made you inefficient. We were told lies, and those lies killed millions." In May 1945, as Berlin fell, American officers found a final German intelligence report on Willow Run, dated April 20th, Hitler's last birthday. The report confirmed everything: Willow Run's output, the overwhelming numbers. The German agents had reported the facts 2 years earlier. No one believed them. Germany didn't lose because it lacked intelligence. It lost because its leaders didn't have the wisdom to accept the truth when it didn't fit their beliefs. Let that sink in. Reality doesn't care about ideology. Math isn't swayed by wishful thinking. Ignore the truth and it comes back to bite you hard. That last report never reached Hitler. By then, he was deep in his bunker. The 1,000-year Reich had days left, and American bombers, many born at Willow Run, were delivering the final argument that German intelligence had tried and failed to make 2 years before. History's verdict is simple. German spies did their jobs. Their leaders failed catastrophically. There's a warning here for every nation. Reality doesn't care what you believe. Deny the facts, and sooner or later, you'll pay for it. Willow Run didn't just build bombers. It proved that democracy works, that diversity isn't a weakness, and that freedom really does deliver. German agents counted the planes. German leaders just didn't believe it. That disbelief destroyed the Third Reich as surely as any bomb ever did.